What message did you tell yourself so that you can constantly see the bright side, the funny side of life? No.
Well, I think it just comes back to that. Everything that happens in life has a positive and a negative. Okay, and unless it's a really serious negative, you can live with it. You can work around it. You can find a solution. I think, for my sake, there's enough drama in life without having to create drama. Okay, so save the drama for the serious things, and apart from that, get on with it. Do it. Sort it out. Move on. Life ain't tough in that sense. Okay, so for all that rest of stuff, which is 90-95% of life or more, move on. Okay, why being a drama? What will being a drama help? How will being a drama solve it? Because you can just do something and it will be solved. So save that energy, save that passion for that part of life that is tough, that is frustrating, and that is dangerous in terms of the broadest definition of the term. And save life for that. Save your worry for those things. Don't waste it on, oh, I've run out of milk, or oh, I've got a power cut, or something like that. It's life. Move on. Sorry. Anyway.
How have you been growing your ability to think over the years?
Yes, I think that when I go back and I think about the studies that I did, I mentioned to you I've been an avid reader for as long as I can remember. I had a trunk full of audiobooks back when I was first getting started many years ago, and I never really stopped just consuming as much as I could. And now today that takes the form of books and articles and blog posts and Substack and Reddit and anything I can get my hands on. But I would say that there was a time when my reading was much more technical. I was reading about the strategy and technology and process and operations in these things. I was reading business books, trying to round out my technical abilities. But more recently, I've started to balance that. I still read those things to stay current, but I do a lot more philosophical reading outside of the business literature and find ways to bring them in. So every morning I have a practice. I wake up early. I wake up about 4:30 a.m. my local time, and I immediately sit down and I read from either scriptures or text or ancient philosophical works about the structure of the universe or the nature of reasoning or our relationship with ourselves or the nature of fear or whatever it might be. And I don't read for very long. It's probably about 20 minutes, but it's enough to give me perspective for the rest of my day. I follow that up with 20 minutes of meditation, and I follow that up with a good workout, ideally, and that helps me say that for an hour or so of time, I've already accomplished 3 of my important mantras: body like stone, mind like water, spirit like sky. Those are the 3 things I want to channel in my life. And so for me, when the morning is early and have good energy, those are the things that I like to do. So the nature of what I read and how it has affected my thinking has really expanded my mindset, so that I notice things I didn't notice before, and I've slowed down enough, and I think my thinking has benefited from both space and the nature of what I'm stuffing into my brain.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Share with us the wisdom of how we could be happy and enjoy happiness, please.
Yeah. Oh boy, luck has so much to do with happiness. Who you're married to, how much much funds you have available, who are the people in your life, and what do they do for you and with you. There are so many people who have such disadvantages in life. Homeless people, people with mental health problems, people who, for one reason or another, don't have a social support system that they can use when things get rough. I've been so lucky to have not had those sorry experiences that would certainly make one unhappy. It's also the fact that happiness versus unhappiness, is a hereditary, a genetic part of our genes. I mean, the fact is that many people suffer from severe depression because of their genetic makeup. And there aren't lots of things they can do about that. You can't make yourself different that way. So, I mean, I don't have advice. I mean, I did give you one piece of advice, and that was for academics. When you have a sabbatical, go away and stay away for as long as you can. That's certainly helpful. I mean, being in another culture for an extended period of time, like a year, that's certainly helpful. What else? It's all the things that could go wrong that didn't,
And it would be very happy for Vivian and I if we can see you and your wife in person. Thomas, over the years, how have you been sharpening and expanding your ability to think that you can share with us so that we can learn from the expert like you?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is that learning and thinking to me belong together, right? So for me, I think one of the people who think more deeply and think better are people who are learners, So you could be spending 6 hours on Instagram or TikTok or whatever and watching, people fall in puddles or cats that jump from trees. I mean, that's fine. You could do that. Or you could be reading a book. You could be reading a story. You could be learning about how nature works, how humans work, right? So for me, learning to think is learning, first of all. I think the second thing about thinking that I really believe in is focus. And by the way, I'm struggling with that. So it's a lifelong learning experience. What's important to me, the most important good that helps us think is time. And for me, the question is, on your schedule, where's your thinking time? Just look at your schedule. Tell me when you're thinking. So for me, focusing on that in a deliberate fashion is important. One way for me to think is to write. Like, write down a thought. Another way to think is to teach, right? If I can explain it to you, I know I've understood it. Frankly, not before. It's really hard to be sure that you understood a problem if you've not taught it to others. But the
focus is a mental state. Of course, there's practitioners who teach you how to do that, from your side of the world, right? Whether it's yoga, whether it's meditation techniques, right? Calming your mind is a good thing. My version of that is I go outdoors a lot. I go run. I move my body. Thinking also means to be in a healthy body, right? So for me, that's the other thing that really matters. But really giving your time the focus, that your mind the focus that it takes. There's a final point that matters, and it's mattering differently for different people. I think well with other people. So some of my best ideas happen in the presence of other people. Not everybody is the same. There are people that need to be for 24 hours by themselves, then they have the best ideas. Or they have understanding. Again, I need my alone time too, but if it comes to thinking of new ideas, often it has to do with interaction of trusted individuals other than me. Also people who think differently than me. So that's another element of it. So those are the pieces. I just, the rule that I really always say, whether it's about thinking or about other things, show me your calendar and I'll tell you what's important to you. So if you say my goal is to do X and Y, your calendar does not show that. It's not important to you. You just talk about it. And so if your goal is to improve your thinking and your knowledge, show it when you do that in your life. It takes time to get better. I don't care what it is. Whether you want to get better in sports, whether you want to get better in science, thinking, get better learning about other people, it needs to be time that you spend. Time is the most precious good for everything.
Wow. As an expert, we want to ask you yourself, your own way of thinking. How have you been helping you to grow your ability to think over the years?
So I would say two things. That's a great question, very practical question. The first is to learn how to better manage your own judgment. Alex Osborne, who was the founder of our department, invented the methodology brainstorming and developed the process, the very teachable, trainable process called creative problem solving. And one of the keys in that is to learn to suspend judgment. Learn to defer your judgment, because often, because of training, when we come up with an idea or we start to play with possibilities, the first thing we do is we evaluate it, we judge it. And that slows thinking down. And so defer your judgment, suspend it, hold it off, explore possibilities, because as soon as you start judging, you narrow your thinking down to evaluating rather than exploring. So learn to suspend judgment, hold off criticism, allow yourself to explore openly. Number one. Number two, in a chaotic world, learn to take a break. Give yourself the concept is called idea time to think. So take a walk, engage in some activity that's not highly cognitively demanding, because then that promotes mind wandering. Go for a bike ride, go for a drive, do something that allows your mind to take a break and your brain to wander through memories. And often what this does is it leads to new connections, because when we're in a world that's go, working all the time, we don't allow ourselves, we need this incubation break. And great creators, they make it a daily routine to go for a walk, exercise, do something physical that's often very useful, or engage in a hobby. but something that allows your brain time to reflect. That's really important. So I'd say those two things: learn to defer judgment, and then two, give yourself idea time.
The idea time and defer our judgment. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Well, that's very, very tricky, in part because I'm not a practitioner. So I'm a scientist, basic scientist, so I don't really study tools. Like, I can tell you that the majority of the things that people talk about, they either, they probably all local. So number one is like, there's no tool that works in all contexts, in all situations. It seems trivial, but it's true. You can't just, I can tell you, for instance, well, if only you were able to practice some mindfulness and distance yourself, decenter yourself from the situation. What does that mean? Well, take a step back, ask yourself maybe in critical moments, what would somebody else do? Or what would the other self do? Like imagine yourself viewing yourself from a third person. Not all of those things I've studied in my research empirically, and they do help in challenging situations in the heat of the moment when you're dealing with interpersonal conflict with somebody. They do seem to help a little bit to take this kind of broader perspective, to approach things in a less sort of insular fashion, where you expand your scope. But I would not recommend those things for everybody all the time, because there are certainly moments in your life where, imagine you're making passionate love to your partner. You don't want to distance yourself from that moment. Imagine you're playing a wonderful game with friends, or you're engaged in some kind of a sport activity that you really love, or you play guitar. You don't want to distance yourself from that moment. You want to be in that moment.
Yeah.
You want to be the self. So you want to focus on those experiences. You don't want to imagine being this kind of abstract self, viewing yourself from a side. So in some situations it helps, in other situations it doesn't. And I think the true understanding of wisdom is to figure out which one is which, when you can apply one versus another. That's a very, very challenging task. So I don't know if I can tell you a general set of rules. I think, decentering, that is the cornerstone of various streams of mindfulness practice, be it in Buddhism, or in some ways it's also present in various yoga practices, or in other sort of more Western-oriented traditions of reflecting on yourself. I'm not sure about prayer, but certainly sort of reflective exercises that sort of are present in such traditions as Stoicism. I do think that they do help, and if you can sort of engage in them, if you practice this type of meditation, you probably will develop habitually this approach. But even that is context specific. I just talked to Sintel Segal about this, like one of the world's leaders in mindfulness research. And we thought about sort of, like these monks who in Vietnam or in other parts of Southeast Asia would spend a month in seclusion, where they will not be talking to anybody, where they would be mostly focusing on studying and less on the food will be limited, they're not talking to anybody, and so on and so forth. And so in that moment they show this incredible self-control. They're all devoted to the meditation. They are the masters of this craft of decentering. And then there are moments when they come back into the real world and they succumbing to all sorts of things. Not everybody, of course, but the same temptations that we all succumb to. And in fact, what Cinda was saying, that sometimes, probably anecdotally, some of them succumbing to more issues than you and I would, because they don't know, they haven't practiced of how to live in this world, because they focus so much on living in that secluded world where they are the champions. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that it's all context variable, and you have to be very, very careful. A lot of it is often in the balancing act about figuring out what strategy, what situation would help in this environment versus in this other environment that you find yourself, and figuring out what the difference is between the two. But that is an ongoing sort of study. I mean, so I can't tell you, because for every single person it may look somewhat different. But if I were to give one, I guess I would say decentering and some form of mindfulness practice that includes decentering.
But these are choices that you're going to make in individual relationships, because every relationship's different. Relationships are built or destroyed one conversation at a time. So it's not just me and it's not just we, there's a you factor in there too, right? So it's thinking about the choices that I make that come easy to me, that are advantageous for me. What are the choices that I'm forced to make that are advantageous for you? And what's the subset of all that that betters both of us? So we thought, okay, there's a little triangle in here. How does that work? In the book art, it comes out as 3 circles because of graphic design, but I love it. And I think just from hearing it, it's compelling, right? It's like, okay, there are 3 points of view here, you know, yours, mine, and ours. How do we leverage the intentional choices that we make to make things better? Because a lot of times, we navigate work relationships by feel. We do it by gut, by pattern. We do what worked before, I'll do that again. What worked with this person, well, I'll just do it with this person. Well, that's not how human beings work.
Yeah.
Right? I need to take some stock, assess my situation, right? The cultivate outside in approach. And then if I'm holding up my end of the bargain here, I have to be intentional about what my choices are. I can't just replicate my pattern. If I'm successful or we're successful, then we're lucky. But if we're being intentional, man, the magic can happen much faster.
So, General Duke, how have you been improved your ability to think over the years?
I think with more knowledge that you get, and the older you get more maturity, and you can analyze situations more rationally than now I can see that happens to me in my life as I've gotten maturity and more experience, and I can relate these experiences to my present experience and apply the lessons that I've tried to learn in the past. And I think life is a building block of experience and relationships. And I found now that since I've become a Christian and a follower of Jesus, I pray more about, Lord, what should I do? And where should I go? And how should we operate in our life, in our relationships? And I've never heard the voice of God in my ears, but I had these impressions in my heart. So it's like God's Spirit speaking to our spirit in our heart. It says, go this way. You have an inclination that you ought to do this. And when sometimes I miss it, but most of the time it works out. So and Dottie and I, we pray a lot about decisions and what we should do and where we should go and what we should say, and just all of these things that make us one, if you will, with God. And so it's been an exciting journey for the last 40 years or so.
how have you been growing your ability to think, Justin?
Well, I would say this is an awesome question. I think that as I've gotten better at thinking, I've realized that I'm not good at thinking. Maybe is the way I would say it. So like, I live in an echo chamber professionally, where I'm consistently put in a room where I'm expected to or supposed to be an expert, right? It's like the guy that knows the most in the room about whatever we're talking about. And the more people that EMA has hired, the more I've learned that I don't know everything. And I know that, but like I'm reminded, maybe is the right term, that I don't know everything. But from a personal standpoint, you know, you have to look at what matters most to you. And that level of thinking, that to me, that has been something I've enjoyed reading a bit about, like being more present, being more aware of my weaknesses, being more of what do people see when they look at you? And that level of thought is something that's really hard to do when you're trying to accomplish things, right? Like I'm goal oriented. I'm like, you know, get the hammer out and the pickaxe and dig the hole, and I don't care what anybody thinks, get out of my way. And that works. I mean, look, at being a bulldozer is super effective when you need to move stuff. And I don't regret having that trait, I think, in my personality, but holy cow, when you take a step back holistically and look at like who you are as a whole person, I've run over a lot of people I didn't need to run over, and I think it's done, you know, I wouldn't say damage, but it's stuff that maybe I could have done better. And so to me, thinking is let's look at the landscape of, you know, you want to go here, and to get there, you don't just go here to here. I mean, there's, you know, all these pathways between here and there, and you need to look at the path rather than the destination and the starting point. And you know, again, you know, I try to be honest about it. You know, I'm really bad at that stuff, but I'm at least I'm aware of it, and I want to get better at it. But man, I get so fascinated by stuff that I'm not good at, because it's like, I figure all this other stuff out. I can figure this out, and if I get good at thinking, I think that, you know, I'll be a really unstoppable person personally, as much as I think I can be professionally. And, you know, professionally, again, it's just solving problems and answers and stuff that I think I do on a day-to-day basis. Personally, holy cow, that's a whole can of worms with how to be a good dad and be a good husband and support people and be there and not, you know, still travel. And if I ever figure that out, man, I'll be a Superman. I'm hoping someday I'll figure that out.
Well, gosh, that's a great question, and I think these are questions for the world, not just Derek. You know, these are questions for everybody listening in. Should be answering this question in their own definition, and I think that's what this is all about. But in my particular case, I think I'd like to think that I've always had the mindset that if I can learn something, I can take that something and share it. Mm-hmm. And just like planting trees, if I can plant that tree, I know that's going to grow into something beautiful and go from there. And if I can take an idea and do the same thing and plant it with another person. So I've always kind of trained my brain and my mind to just absorb. And it's not just reading a book. It's not just having a conversation with a philosopher or a doctor or a lawyer. It's about noticing everything in between. And to me, the study of life is everything in between. So when I look to the left over at that beautiful tree in my yard, and then I look over here at that beautiful mountain, I know both items exist. But what's important to me is how much I missed in between, looking from the tree to the mountain, there's so much here in front of me between looking at the tree and the mountain that I'm teaching myself to recognize every situational and item in that transfer of vision over to the next view. So it's almost like I'm scanning as I go. And so instead of the tree and the mountain being the items of importance or what I'm acknowledging or what have you, I'm trying to pay attention to, after the tree there was a homeless guy sitting on the corner that needed $1. And after the homeless man there was a sign on the store that said closed for business. Then I want to recognize all the moments and things in between that next item, so I absorb and retain everything I need to make my next move. And I try to do that in the most positive shape to where I can share it with another person or in some light that it's like planting a tree, planting an idea. And I like to take that stuff in between. And I'm learning this.
Yeah.
So recognizing all that information in between, I think is important.
Beautiful.
And that's what I'm trying to do a little better.
Beautiful.